Everybody, good evening. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for tuning in, and hopefully you're sharing.
Oh, yeah.
Sharing on social media, calling your friends, letting people know you're listening to a Mexican Crossing Lines with your host, Cindy Gomez-Schempp.
And Duke Gomez-Schempp.
Here on 88.1 FM KPPPLP, Fargo Moorhead, where we are adding local color to your airwaves. And here on a Mexican Crossing Lines, we're going to be discussing modern day lynching. I wanted to weigh in on this issue because the rhetoric has become so toxic around pointing out the violence, the modern day lynching, the modern day Holocaust that is happening to indigenous people, the concentration camps where children and family members are being beaten, abused, drugged with heavy psychotropic drugs, raped, tortured, frozen, starved, poisoned, and the loss of families, the separation of families, permanent separation of families that is being done. That can only be a continuation of the genocide of taking indigenous children, assimilating them and giving them to white people. And that's a continuation of genocide, cutting us off at the roots, cutting our tradition, our identity, our connection to our own families as indigenous people. And, you know, as they said it before, killing the Indian and saving the man. Mm-hmm. We are human beings, even if we are not assimilated to the nationalism of America.
Yeah.
We are human beings. We are First Nations people of this continent. And what I have always talked about in terms of, policing, immigration policy, and police brutality is that all of that violence and death is rooted in white supremacy, is rooted in controlling people of color, is rooted in slavery. It's rooted in land theft and genocide of those who were on the land, the indigenous people. That's what it's rooted in. Yeah. That's where it came from. So you can call it ICE, you can call it a detention center, you can call it the mass incarceration of black people, but it's still the new Jim Crow. It's the new slavery. It's the new genocide. It's the new rebranding to make it more palatable to white folks to participate in. Did you hear what I said?
Yeah.
White folks find murder, genocide, land theft, and kidnapping of children of color, the killing of black people, the enslaving of people of color. They love it. It's been the cornerstone of American identity.
Yeah, it's been normalized in white culture. You know, it's just very normalized, and I know people that aren't, educated enough or have thought about this enough are going to get defensive for even saying that. But all you have to do is look. And we'll show you things tonight on the show. It's not very distant past of our history. Remember when I was born, it was illegal for me to be in a relationship with Cindy, my wife, who is Mexican. It was illegal. When I was born until I was 7 years old, and then the Lovings in Virginia, took it to the Supreme Court and got a ruling that, you can't keep two people from two different races from marrying. Not that anything changed after that. Right now, there out of all marriages, there's probably a fourth are mixed marriages between white people and people of color, and a fourth of those fail because it's really hard to have a marriage with a person of color in a white supremacist society. And we have not arrived. We have not transcended race. We have not transcended any of this because we aren't embracing our past, our ugly past as white people. We have an ugly past. And we have to embrace it instead of trying to forget it, trying to push it backwards, trying to push it out of sight. It is there, and it influences what we do today. It influences every part of society. It's so systemic. I'm trying to change myself, but that's not going to change society. We got to change society, which means collectively we have to change. It's not just one person doing something different. I can't just go out into my little house over here and have a different life and not participate in the rest of the systems and institutions, because I'm basically perpetuating them from having all the privilege I have. So there's a lot of work to do, and part of that is becoming aware and understanding the history and looking at the ugly history. And don't look away. Look at it, remember it, internalize it, believe it, because it's there.
Spend time looking at it all the time. When you're a person of color, you think about and talk about and learn more deeply about the history of people of color, and in particular yourself, so that you can build on your identity and teach it to your kids. And we do that all the time, every day, all day. Duke knows now that you live with us that it's a topic every day, single day,
every moment, because as soon as I start forgetting about white spaces and I immerse myself in white supremacy, my family suffers. My family suffers from any moment I do it. Any moment. It could even be little. It's not that big of a deal. It's a big deal when it comes to supremacy and not protecting my family and putting them in danger because of my participation with these racist institutions. I still have to participate, but I have to be a lot smarter. And what I do, how I do it, I have to be a lot more aware, I have to be a lot faster. There ain't no time for kind of go back and go, well, I didn't do that right over there, because that could result in people getting taken, people getting killed in my own family.
And unfortunately, in the majority of the cases where people of color speak out against racism, fascism, brutality, corruption, abuse, misconduct, etc., white people, even those that recognize what is happening is true, that yes, this thing is happening, they refuse to acknowledge that that is because of racism, because of supremacy. They chalk it up to some other thing and they excuse it. And the reason I believe that white people do this is because to admit that this is happening, whether it's me or any other person of color that is complaining about all of the horrible abuses that we discuss here on the Mexican Crossing Lines, would be to admit that they are aware and that they are okay with the level of abuse and violence that we experience of people as people of color, and that this level is intolerable, but they don't want to do anything about it. They don't want to say anything about it. And that I've seen it in you. I've seen it where you're more concerned about upsetting a racist in your own family than you are about the impact of them using the N-word to speak to your kids. And that, to me, is a terrifying paradigm, that you as a parent could stand there and hear somebody in your family use the N-word in front of your Mexican people of color, and not feel any type of protective instinct, concern for us, or wanting to, your concern for making sure that the racists stay comfortable is greater than your concern for the people of color in your life.
Yeah.
Or it was. I'm telling a story of that really did happen in our relationship with Duke's white family, and there are many others like it. When you come into close proximity to a white person and their family, and you live that shared experience, all of these things bubble to the surface, and it's how you respond to them as a white person to show your brown and black brothers and sisters, and in this case your wife and kids, that they are equally as important. Their feelings matter to you at least as much as the racists attacking us.
Yeah, exactly.
And I have come to realize that the racists attacking us, whether it's people in your family or just people in the general public, the racists attacking us are attacking us because they don't want you to be humane.
Yeah.
They don't accept that you're treating us as equals. They will not allow you to be a couple that is sincere.
Yeah.
If white people can't tell, don't know for sure that you've got me on a leash and you control me and you tell me what to do and you put me in my place on behalf of white supremacy and angry racists when they ask you to, then they will want to attack you personally. They will come against you, even if it's your own family member, and stop talking to you and push you away. You've experienced this.
Oh, definitely. And there's many others. And when I think back of how I behaved in the past, I've had many examples of this, and I've learned the seriousness of doing that, and also the huge magnetic draw to support white supremacy. The expectation from white supremacy is so strong. It's like a magnetic power that comes into my presence as soon as any white people are around us as a family. And I've had, I have to reflect on experiences, and I didn't learn so well. I've learned so much more of being in a loving relationship with you because it's real. It wasn't just my acquaintances. I mean, there's a long time ago where I supported these kids who were accused of crimes of shooting a woman in West Fargo. And I helped organize a demonstration for one of the kids that was being charged with he was driving a car or something. And we called the jury racist and did a press conference, did a march. And the family asked me to speak for them, and I did. I had white people white people I didn't even know, walk into my office and say, "We've got to have a talk." And I'm like, "We've got to have a talk? We don't even have a relationship." But they're going to talk to me about how I have been a race traitor. And they're going to set me straight because they need to maintain white supremacy. I've had numerous times of where you can call me a race traitor, a Mexican lover, and all this sort of stuff. But that's an attempt to get me to start throwing you under the bus, throwing people of color under the bus, and shilling for white supremacy to continue to build the white supremacy. And that's horrifying. That's horrifying that my community members that I'm encountering and don't even know that well, not even a close relationship, feel they have a right to come up to me and tell me they have to talk to me and straighten me out for what I'm doing. They tried to kick me off the planning commission because I did that. One of the guys went in front of the mayor and said, and the city council members, and said, you have to get rid of him. He was down there protesting. They're like, it has nothing to do with him being on the planning commission. Mm-hmm. And he said he wanted to get rid of me. And they did anyways later, but at that time, at least a few white people had sense, and they said, no, we can't do that. We can't honor that request because it's absurd. But that's the sort of thing, and the pushback. And those are only two little examples. There's many, many more, and you will experience many, many more. And you have to be ready for that. And you have to collect your thoughts and get your game down. And you got to ramp up your game.
Yeah. And, that's just a couple of examples of how the white institutions and people in power in our cities enforce white supremacy. They enforce it.
Yeah.
Like there's all of these unwritten laws, like the ones that Karen used to call the Moorhead cops and sent the sheriff's department and the cops to my house for 5 days to stop us from broadcasting. Yeah. These examples just keep coming. And this is for trying to expose supremacy, fascism, Nazis, racists. That is why we have been attacked, censored, threatened, and even punished in these ways, as Duke has mentioned. And I want to encourage those of you out there who are reaching your boiling point with this racism in this country, and you're like, that's it. I've accepted the fact that the people that are Trump supporters are Nazis. They are racist. They just are. Anyone still trying to make an excuse for the Republican Party or the Trump supporters and saying that oh, like I've heard people say that, the majority of Christians, especially evangelical Christians, 75% support Trump. You can't say you're a Christian and say you support a rapist, a pedophile, a guy that, he's been accused of all of these things. And there's like a good amount of evidence suggesting that these are credible allegations. There's like 19 women that have accused him of sexual assault.
I have to question what it means when they say they're Christians, because I was brought up Catholic, and I wasn't a very good Catholic. I didn't study enough. I didn't take it seriously enough. And later in my life, I started taking my Christianity very seriously. And you asked me if I had read the Bible. I'm like, nah. I grew up and had religion classes, but I didn't read the Bible. We had different lessons, but I didn't read the Bible. We had a Bible sit in our house. I didn't read it. I did look at the one that had a lot of pictures in it. It was a really beautiful Bible that was in like 4 or 5 different languages. Yiddish and Hebrew and Arabic and English, and it had these fascinating paintings. And I looked at that, but I didn't read the Bible until my wife said, "Well, let's read it." And it's from from the beginning to the end. Old Testament, New Testament, the other apocryphals, the Catholic books that go in with it. We've read the Quran, and when I hear people say that they are Christian, the things that stand out to me is you have to protect the refugee. God says it many times. The refugee, the homeless, the least of these, very prominent through the Old Testament and the New Testament. And how can people that profess to understand that about Christianity say they support a man that doesn't believe in any of that? And to me, I'm like, I can't question your Christianity. God can only question you. But it confuses me to hear people acting like that. It's confusing to me.
Well, we have a Mexican saying, no hagas cosas buenas que parezcan malas. Don't do things that claim to be good or good for people or for the public good that have bad outcomes, that actually produce bad outcomes.
Okay.
Because it's hypocritical. It's obviously hypocritical that your goal isn't, it's kind of like, all of these falsely named government acts and laws like the Patriot Act. Supposedly it's
the Clear Skies
It
Act.
claims to be a public good, but the outcomes of surveillance and police state actually have not been good for Americans.
No.
They've rolled back our rights. And so we, as a media justice nonprofit organization, me as a Mexican Crossing Lines, being an indigenous First Nations person of this continent, my job is first and foremost to survive the ongoing genocide and to scream it from the hilltops to everyone that will hear. This is what is happening to us. To tell the people, stop, repent. As Kesha was saying, I hope you're praying on your knees.
Yeah.
Because what is being done here, what is happening is modern day lynchings, is Holocaust. That's what's happening. Holocaust 2018 is happening right now. And interestingly, someone recently sent me an article that I wrote quite a while ago. And as you may recall, Karen included one of my articles from a long time ago to white people, an open letter to white people on the eve of their wake-up call. You can put that in the links, but once again, that's an open letter to white people on the eve of their wake-up call. And it was right around that same time, several years ago, when I wrote Modern-Day Lynching as a Participation Sport.
Yeah.
And it gave people a history lesson on how we got here. In addition to that article, another very important article that talks about and explains the history, the very racist an unconstitutional, not to mention cruel and inhumane history of Border Patrol, immigration policy, all of that, ICE, and how it's actually a function of enforcement of white supremacy. That's it. That's all it is. And Border Patrol is a function of white supremacy. All of these can be found at mexi-can.org. We will pop those links into the comments of this show, and you can find all of that stuff on kpppfm.com. Duke, tell everybody how to get a hold of us and where to find all of our other stuff.
Yeah, kpppfm.com. That's our main website that we host all our shows. I try to get the shows on there, within days. I usually wait till they air in the local community, so the people that are listening to the radio, because we take these live streams, most of them, not all of them, and we edit those for radio play. We take out swear words and stuff like that in the music and things like that, and we play them locally on our local 88.1 dial. So to actually find the shows, Facebook tends to get cluttered and you tend to lose the videos. So the best way is to go to kpppfm.com and go to Mexican Crossing Lines, or go to the archives and see any of the other shows that we're broadcasting and that we've put on the web. So that's one way. The other way, if you want to get a hold of us, if you want to give us a call, you can call that number right there on the screen. It's actually a message line. It's 701-566-0917. And what you can do is you can leave a message up to 3 minutes. And some people do that. You haters, you want to do that, go ahead. Go ahead and record yourself with hate messages for us. We listen. Those of you who want to give us some points, you want to make your voice heard, you want to talk to us, you call that number. If that's not your thing, you can do email Cindy at kpppfm.com or Duke at kpppfm.com. And also, you can go to Facebook, and our Facebook is probably the most popular way that people seem to communicate with us, because we have an open public page. You don't have to like us. You don't have to follow us. We encourage you to like us, encourage you to follow us. But you can just comment to us. You can write messages to us, and you go to 88.1 Fargo-Moorhead. We also have another, our nonprofits Facebook page is the People's Press Project. And our other projects is Mexi-Can, Mexi-Can on Facebook. And so I encourage you to do all that, and give us a call, give us an email. Keep in touch with us. Tell us what you want to tell us. We do review some of it. I see sometimes we haven't responded very much. Sometimes I'll just give some sort of response so we read it. We read all of it. Believe me, we read everything that's sent to us. We listen to everything that's sent to us. So we do appreciate it. And I don't want to ever discourage anybody from sending things. Like, I've had people send things, I'm like, I'm so glad you are researching this. I'm so glad you alerted me to this, because I can't follow all that stuff. And when we have, 10, 20, 30 people out there that are following stuff and they think we should know about it, it does us a great service, and you participate with our programming, and we really appreciate that.
And I want to encourage everyone to continue to participate in shaming, shunning, and shutting down racists, Nazis, homophobes, any of these people celebrating the Holocaust, the separation of families, all of these things that are the awful things that are happening in America. I want you to keep videotaping those people. Folks, you got to be prepared. You really got to start thinking as white folks. I know that you guys have reached this consciousness now where you know that white people calling the cops on people of color is attempted murder, that they're trying to bring state-sanctioned violence to beat, torture, abuse, and kill a person of color, because you know that these cops are out there extrajudicially murdering people, and they act as judge, jury, and executioners of those who they kill. That is not justice. That is not how our Constitution is supposed to operate. Never has been. And that is not how you follow the law. That is not how you're being a law and order type of country. And by the way, most of the people that talk about that tend to be people that want to uphold white supremacy enforcement. Yeah. And that's mostly what law enforcement does. They originally were slave catchers, trying to make sure that white people got their slaves back into their property. So encourage folks to continue to do that. I may not be able to do regular shows with all of the racists y'all are sending me. Some of you are going real hard and doing the screen caps and putting it out there. Make sure you share it with the hashtag, and share stuff to our page, or send us stuff to 88.1. We will continue to call out and shame these racists on shows, on posts, on our social media pages. So you can really have some kind of impact in a way that in a lot of other campaigns, just sitting behind a keyboard, you don't really have all of that power. You do have an immense amount of power in your local communities and all throughout the United States. If you see something like this happening out in public and you're able to capture it and share it in social media or send it to a media source and or screenshot these offensive, racist, horrible hate crimes that are occurring for everyone in all of history and all of posterity to remember who these people were. Let's hold them accountable.
Yeah. Let's
hold them accountable, because there is a pushback right now to try to, institutionalize, recolonize the minds of people of color, and to put white people back in line, saying things like, we'll have to have a... This is just on our local news recently, by the way. We'll have to have a discussion tonight about all of the places that are complaining that people are photographing people in public, which you can do. There's no expectation of privacy out in a public space.
Yes.
As Karen learned, there's also no expectation of privacy on social media when you put out public information about yourself.
Exactly.
So, anyway, the local media said, after going over these stories where people complained and it turned out there was nothing illegal going on, people who are photographers or media people out in public spaces were taking pictures and doing things the correct way. But entitled people were getting very upset and harassing them and threatening them. I've noticed that as a photographer, as a journalist, the increase of how people react to even somebody in the media taking pictures, much less, John Q. Public. And we did shows way before we even had this radio station talking about how the local cops threatened, harassed, and even tasered media personalities for filming them while they were on duty. None of this ever really stopped people from, nothing ever stopped the cops from doing what they've been doing. No one called them out. No one held them accountable for those behaviors. So they have continued to do that, and they have continued to escalate their chokehold on the minds and hearts and the rights of the citizenry of Fargo-Moorhead and Dilworth and West Fargo. Yeah. And the media is complicit because they will come in and say, well, it's not legal, but we'll tell you why sometimes it's not right to photograph people in public. And I'm like, what? Wait a minute. Whoa. You're advocating at a time where people are dying in mass, where people are being kidnapped from their jobs, from their schools, from the road, from a gas station. People are being kidnapped by people in plain clothes that work for ICE. People are being kidnapped and separated from their families. People are being exiled and deported, even U.S. citizens, even permanent U.S. residents, even spouses, foreign spouses, immigrants of American citizens that are awaiting naturalization. Even those people, nobody is safe at this point from the maximum threats that we're facing in society. And yet we have a media telling people that there's an etiquette, and even though it's completely legal and totally right for you to film in public, there's reasons why you shouldn't do it anyway, instead of telling people to film more and more and more.
Yeah, I mean, our local media is cowards, and they're complacent with the infrastructure. They pander to racism, all of them. Most of them are owned by big companies that aren't even from this community that give them walking orders. They aren't going to go against that. They get press releases from the police department and just print them and say them right on the air. And For you to complain about the police department, it is so fixed. You have to complain to the officer that probably abused you.
Yeah.
You have to go in there, and they won't let you file a complaint.
No.
The only way you can actually hold them accountable is if you take them to court. You have to hire an attorney, take them to court, and then that gets buried too because the media ain't going to cover that. And you have to be able to look up stuff in the state records, actually know what happened. And many times you're basically told you can't talk about it, and we'll settle this. And that's mainly with people of color. White people aren't doing it. We don't hold our own police accountable, and then we let our local media pander to them. I mean, look at what the 3 media stations did when Trump came here. Where was there any alternative view of Trump? They were there like, oh, I'm so excited. I get to shake Donald Trump's dick. It's just like, it just really made me mad that they didn't have any objective thing. They were just like, they were at a party. Oh, well, we're important. And these are the people that have been media for years here. It's disgusting. And that's not going to hold our police accountable. Our police are doing things that are horrible. And there's documentation, but there's no way to complain about it. I went in front of the city council and talked about how the police broke right into a woman's house and roughhoused her, hurt her jaw, and they had no warrant. They were breaking the law. And the police chief is like, nope, it didn't happen. The people in the city council was like, where is the record of this? Where's the complaint? And I said, well, the whole reason there's no complaint is because you can't complain about it. Dumb city council member. And that's the sort of people running our city government. It really makes me angry because they are keeping it going. Because they are the people, white people that have privilege, that are controlling the message too. And we supposedly elect them. We have this lowest voter turnout. It's less than 50%. And during a primary, it's like 30%. So those people will get elected by 400 votes. And will represent the whole city of Moorhead. In Fargo, it's similar but higher numbers. A small percent of people in the whole city voted for those city commissioners, those city council members, and they act like they have the support of the people. And they don't, and we let them run our government that way because we don't go to meetings. We don't get involved in that. That's supposed to be their job. The police departments are under the city commissions, the city councils, the mayors. But they don't run that way. They're the Gestapo. They are above everybody. They carry guns. They have weapons. They have military-grade weapons in our communities. You saw them. You saw our Cass County officers and police, Fargo police, go to Standing Rock with weapons of the military. That's our local police. No one said peep about that. And yet we honor Sheriff Laney. Good thing he's not running again. But another person just like him is going to replace him because that's who actually gets elected.
Yeah. And it's very difficult to educate people, to prepare people. We're organizers. You're an organizer, and you teach people about their rights and how to maintain your rights, how to keep your rights. And the thing is that, unfortunately, if the infrastructure, if the resources of the community are there primarily to shut down these discussions and to enforce white supremacy at every turn, it makes it really difficult for us, not only as media people doing media justice work, but as organizers to get out our message. So that is why we do these shows at a Mexican Crossing Lines, to encourage movements, to encourage campaigns, to teach people how you do this stuff, and to teach you to be prepared for what the backlash will be. I do want to make one note about one of the people that I talked about on my last show, Shirley Aitken. Now, I promised her that I would make it clear to folks on my show that we discussed her comments stating that she did not mean for us to mistake what she said as being racist against the kids that are in detention, but rather she was talking about the guards. Unfortunately, the English words that she used and the context of the post that I made, in the way that she wrote her comment, could only be about the kids who were put in the detention facility. So I told her that given the fact that she explained to me that she has some cognitive issues because of a stroke, etc., that, you know, I would take her at her word and, you know, apologize publicly for anything that I have said about her words that weren't true. And like I said, I'm going to take her at her face value when she says to me that what she meant was something else. But let me say this too. And I'm going to say this to her in the same way I said it to my husband, and the same way that I'm saying it to all the white people out there, especially those of you who are really working hard at not being white supremacists, who are really working hard at exposing white supremacy, at detoxifying your life. To you people, please hear this. You need to take criticism when you're white peopling. You need to hear when you're not doing a very good job, whether that means your comments are not intelligible, your comments could be misconstrued, therefore they're useless. Your comments are virtue signaling, window dressing BS that makes you feel good or raises your hand to be one of the, not me, I'm not involved in the bad stuff that's happening right now, but doesn't really get to the heart of helping in any way, which is also centering yourself and your feelings, which is part of white supremacy. So you need to hear us when we tell you that you're not doing it good enough, because not good enough, it starts to look like it is deliberate flopping, you know, like they do in soccer when they fall on the floor and they're like, oh, I'm hurt. White people always fall on the floor and can't get up when it comes to defending people of color, standing up for people of color, protecting people of color, saying no to white supremacists, standing up to supremacy, standing up to rapists. Then white people seem to have, you know, a lame duck syndrome where they just can't muster the strength. They can't get up the gumption. They can't word properly in English no more suddenly for some reason. And I call BS on that. So while I'm going to be willing to take folks at their word, and I'm even gracious enough to apologize for having called her a name when clearly she did not mean what was written. Okay?
Yeah.
I'm going to take her at that word, especially since she didn't have a bunch of other confirming racist behavior on her page. However, if you are wishy-washy, milquetoast, middle of the road, unintelligible, or not effective, I'm going to see you. I'm going to call that BS out too. Expect me to do that in love, but also as a challenge to you to do better. Because if you keep dragging one foot or dragging your heels, I'm going to know that you're trying to support white supremacy on the down low.
Yeah. Yep. That's
and
right.
we're not going to accept that either. Okay?
Yep.
We're watching and we're holding people accountable. Here is a video that perfectly illustrates the way in which modern day lynchings by police and vigilantes that are recorded and played all over social media and in the news, how white people aren't just celebrating and rejoicing in those deaths, in the suffering, in these holocausts, in these separation of babies, in this torture that's going on. They're not just celebrating it online and saying, good, they deserved it. I hope they put them in jail forever, or I hope their families are ashamed of them. I hope they all go to jail. Something like that. You know, the horrible things that you've heard, especially and including right after an innocent person of color loses their life to the cops. That's not the only thing they're doing. They're going out into those places and they're watching from the sidelines and celebrating the lynchings.
Yeah.
And I'm going to show you an example. This is from a recent lynching by police of either an African American and or Mexican, possibly Blaxican, mixed race person, point is non-white, male, killed by police for no reason. He was not holding anything in his hands. The cops claimed that they shot him because they thought he had a bomb. Clearly, there was nothing on him that would indicate he did have one on. From what I can tell, the video that this woman took, her name is Riri, is horrible. Yeah. Horribly shot. I think she was so scared. She was just like shaking all over the place, and she did not do a good job of videotaping. But it looks like the guy that was shot wasn't even wearing a shirt.
Yeah.
But again, it's very difficult to see the video. What I will do is describe for folks that are listening over the radio that in the video, and we're just about to play it here, what clip I did show of this shows the man that has been shot on a gurney, and the woman is talking about the guns that were used. You can hear in the background is a variety of people that have gathered that had been watching and saw the killing that was done right in broad daylight in front of all of these people. Was precipitated by, the cops moving people out of the way before they murdered him. Like they were getting people far, far, far away. That's another reason why the video is so bad, because this woman is filming from very far away and she's having to zoom in. And of course, that reduces the quality of the film. But what's really important for me, to convey through this audio and this video we're going to show is that the cops used an incredible amount of force and military grade giant, like AK-47 type looking weapons to murder this man that had nothing in his hands and looked like he wasn't even wearing a shirt. Like, where did they think that he had this bomb that they really killed him over?
Yeah, it was an imaginary bomb.
And I think that they were just angry because he was in some way defiant, and so they murder you for any kind of sign of defiance or even standing up for yourself in any way, shape, or form these days. Cops will murder you. They'll even come to your house 5 times in a row if you make a Facebook post about racists. Just ask a Mexican crossed lines. I'll tell you all about it. You can go back and watch it on my shows.
Exactly.
So here's the video, and at the end of it, and this is the part that's important, I only show a clip to set up what was happening at the time that this white man came over to celebrate this murder. But at the end of the video, you see her capture one of these racists that showed up to celebrate the murder. And he says he deserved it. Wow. He's like, the guy is still laying there, dead or dying, and he's screaming, he deserved it. They also sicked a dog. They sicked their dogs on this man who they'd shot. Okay? They shot him dead, and they sicked a dog on him. And the woman was saying, earlier in the video, you will not hear it on this clip, they're eating his face. They're chewing up his face. Wow. They sick the dogs on him as he's dying, as he's bleeding out. The dogs are eating this man alive. This is what was being done in the video prior to this racist man running over there to celebrate the lynching and say, yeah, he deserved it. I think white people in those situations would like nothing more than to get a little bit closer so that maybe they can get a drop of blood, a piece of the person's clothing.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe a bone fragment from the bullet or something to keep as a souvenir. Here's that video. Roll him.
No reason for him to get shot. There was no reason for him to get shot, bro.
Big ass gun. Look at this big ass gun.
It's like 80 y'all.
They had these big ass guns out. Guys, not the time and the place, okay?
Either way, man, that's not right, man.
This isn't the time and the place for this.
Vámonos, que nos van a arrestar a todos por meternos.
Where the fuck you
They trying to say this man had a bomb, had big ass guns on him and everything, maced him, put a dog on him, shot him. Talking about they need crime scene tape. Look at these big ass guns.
So you can see the guns there. Here's the second part, and this is toward the she is leaving because at some point the cops start to go and accost people who are videotaping and threatening them. So they're actually telling the people, get back, and they're focusing especially on those who are there with cameras that look like they're black and brown people of color that are upset about this. And I heard one of the people there that speak in Spanish to someone and say, "Let's get out of here before the cops shoot us for getting the footage."
Yeah, exactly.
So white people don't actually acknowledge or behave as if they know that their police forces are a bunch of trigger-happy thugs that murder people of color for fun and put them in cages for profit. But people of color know. We know what's going on. And this white man is a white supremacist enjoying a lynching. Here he is. She calls him out. Calls him a racist. Apologize for the audio. It's not very good.
They say he got what he deserved. He shouldn't say he had a bomb. This man is racist.
How would somebody do that shit to you? Mookie, they beat his ass every day.
This man said he deserved to get shot. Yeah, but nobody deserved to get shot. This man said he had a bomb, he deserved to get shot. This shit is crazy.
Talking about he got what he deserved. Who deserves it? Shut the fuck up. How about that? How about you deserve to shut the fuck up?
Fuck you.
Bitch, then your mom, bitch. How about that? Fuck your ass up. How about that? Deserve that, bitch. How about that?
Why he deserved to get shot? Because he was black?
Fucking dumbass, bitch.
They did the right thing.
He don't give a fuck now. How you feel now?
That's because he was black.
Oh, dumbass.
Dirty.
Trying to kiss ass. That shit dirty ass. Go on the tracks if you dare to.
I ain't swinging on this man.
Looking like you fucking hungry. Looking like you hungry. You better not dare be on the streets and ask me for $1 because I ain't giving you shit. I ain't giving you shit.
Racist.
Yes,
Racist.
you would, because you look
He deserved to get shot because he was black or Spanish. But if he was white, I think he was Spanish or black. But either way, some white people be racist. They hate us.
He goes and stands right on the railroad tracks.
Yeah.
Notice, people that are listening on the radio didn't have the opportunity to see what happened in the action in that video. And I apologize. There was a lot of profanity, so I'm sure Duke will be bleeping out a lot of beep,
I'll be bleeping out. You won't hear much.
I think you should leave the space in there and then put a beep in so that the audience can actually hear how many times there were profanities in there.
It's going to be beep, 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 beep.
Yep. But here's the thing, and that's not how I encourage people to shut down racists. I do, however, understand why black people are so fed up with and so angry with, and I'm not here to tone police their anger, their pain, their suffering, the suffering of people of color. In that moment, if I had been there, God only knows what would have come flying out of my mouth in such a disgusting display of white supremacist power by the police. That
exactly.
I mean, that's terrorism, and to expect somebody to be able to stay calm, not be triggered, not be terrified, not be upset by that, if you were forced to watch something like that by these terrorist police, you know, I can only imagine how people in that situation would react. So I'm not here to tone police them or to say that they shouldn't use that kind of language. What I will say is this, that their pushback, and they did push back. They started filming the racist, and they said what he said. Hopefully somebody identifies that racist man, and we find out where he works, and people tell his employer what a POS he is, and people tell his neighbors what a POS he is, and he gets shamed, shunned, and shut down for going out and celebrating that. Because you can't celebrate lynchings and murders and not cheer on the genocide of people of color, not cheer on the slavery of people of color, not cheer on the separation of kids from their parents, not cheer on these systems, institutions, and powers that are committing these heinous crimes against humanity here in the United States of America. So I need to remind y'all where it came from and remind you all why it is so disturbing. This is from an article that I wrote called Modern Day Lynchings as a Participation Sport. And you can find that on mexi-can.org, our website for Mexican and Latinx news. And it was written, of course, by me, Cindy Gomez-Schempp. Looks like back in April of 2015.
It might have been before that.
It was probably before that because we transferred it from one website to another.
Exactly.
So I think they wrote these in like circa 2011, 2010-ish, maybe. Yeah, I want to say that. Anyway, here we go. When I get upset with the latest online reactions to the most recent extrajudicial killing of another black or brown person, I have to try to process where the feelings I have come from. And I have to remind myself, as I avoid the comment sections of articles related to yet another dead, unarmed black man, that the reason that I cringe and become sick to my stomach is because these are modern day lynchings. And this is the way in which white America participates in them today. You can call them extrajudicial killings, murder by cop, or simply lynchings. It's all the same. And lynching black and brown folks in America has been a national pastime, a form of entertainment, and a participatory sport for white supremacists. The same way in which white folks of all ages joined in the local lynch mob is the same way that the racists of today flock to the internet or to the scene of the latest crime to add their message of hate to those of the mob. People were proud to stand under the maimed or burned swinging bodies of blacks while pointing and smiling placidly, or Mexicans, or other non-white people. Children, elderly, and everyone in between participated in watching those lynchings, those torturous, murderous lynchings. The photos were made into some gruesome postcards that would be purchased at your local drugstore and mailed all around this country with birthday greetings, notes from tourists saying things like, "This was our weekend barbecue." If you forget that lynchings aren't just about the mob of vigilantes and cops murdering black and brown people. You can find yourself very confused about the feeling of dread that you may have as a person of color every time another black person or brown person loses their life. That's why you have to remember that the lynching was more than just the act itself. It was about the torture of the victims. It was about the whoops and the cheers of joy. It was about the taking of souvenirs from the dead bodies. Today, the lynchings happen on TV or social media, and they are most frequently at the hands of vigilantes, white supremacists, and our law enforcement, with frequent overlap between those groups. Today, the mobs are social media trolls, tone-deaf reporters, and hateful and indifferent sheeple who are quick to join the throngs of people waiting to get their souvenir. But instead of taking a piece of the dead person's body, they take a whack at the dead person's character, their parents, or the dead person's family members. Today, the lynch mob tears down the mourners and protesters, and it criminalizes or demeans the actions of those clamoring for justice. Instead of standing next to the hanging body for the group pic, for the postcard, today's racists are gleefully sharing insensitive memes, pompously mourning over the loss of property and comparing the worth of the lives of protesters seeking justice to the same valueless position of thugs and criminals as the latest hashtag dead black man or woman. Every time I hear about the senseless murder of another black or brown brother or sister and brace for the gut-wrenching hatred that will surely follow in the news, on social media, I now know I'm bracing for the reaction of today's modern day lynch mob. It's bad enough to have to watch the parade of black and brown bodies and bloodied and lifeless bodies on television and the internet every day, every single solitary day. But the national celebration of the murderers, the GoFundMe's accounts that award millions to those who kill black people, brown people. Those are the ways in which the modern day lynch mob operates and celebrates. It is the way that white racists of today can take part in the national pastime of celebrating the murder of black people. And it is the reason why I can't stomach this racist rhetoric any more than I can stomach the people or the comments in those lynch mob pictures and postcards. And I have a link, several links actually, a couple of links that will be shared along with this article, and you can go and look at the other examples. And I encourage you to go and look at the examples of these lynch postcards and compare them to what white people are doing today. If you look at this picture at the bottom there, there's several pictures. One is, they're all of lynchings. Obviously, one is in the woods, one is in a city, the other one there is in the woods at the bottom. That is a double picture there because it's for those
stereograph things.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so you see it in the stereo.
What kinds of pictures?
Oh my God.
What kinds of pictures did they put in stereographs? Weren't those things that people used to look at, like photo albums or memories from trips.
I've seen them at auctions. I've seen them at farmers, older farmers in North Dakota. It's like the they made a thing when we were kids that you put the thing in and you clicked it and you had the two things you looked over. But there were two photographic images that actually were offset a little bit, and you look through two lenses, and with your left and right eyes, what you see three-dimensional because it would be offset. A little bit off on this and a little bit off on that. So your eyes would create depth of field. So it was like you were really there. Like you were totally there seeing that. And a lot of time it had farmhouses. It had like mom and pa, grandpa and grandpa and the family, people that got photographs taken in those days in the early 1900s and before, late 1800s. And so it would be interesting, maybe the World's Fair, but that they were putting lynching postcards into those too. Because those are very commercial. Those are produced by Kodak, by the way. Right. Kodak was in charge. Kodak was the first film company that was manufacturing and also promoting and doing commercialism around photography. And that was a Kodak product.
And wow. That's not the only thing that, I mean, you said, but that they were putting this in there. That's incredible. Racism and slavery and lynching are celebrated in everything in America. Yeah. You put it into your toys. Mm-hmm. You celebrate it in the brands, in the food. You put it into your games, into your songs. You need me to sing the song for you? Nope. You need me to sing 1 little, 2 little, 3 little. You know how it goes, right? Yeah. Or how about that other one? It goes eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Yep. You know that one? You know the songs. Yeah, of course I do. I know them all. You put it in everything. You put it into your nursery rhymes. Mm-hmm. You put it into your stories. You put it into your theater, your first form of American theater. You sprinkle it on your breakfast cereal. You put it in everything. Yep. It's in everything. And white people refuse to acknowledge that it is in everything in your cities. That's right. It's still all around you. And you want to continue to embrace and hold on to the dear memories, the trophies. I guess, rapists and murderers have to keep trophies of their kills and their rapes. Yep, that's true. I mean, that's why you want to keep all of this memorabilia around of the slavery times and of the Confederacy and the murdering of people of color, right? Because you need to keep that around to make you feel warm inside. Mm-hmm. I think that we really need to get rid of all of that stuff so that we can cure America of its genocidal tendencies against people of color. Let's go through some of these postcards because I think it's really important for people to see how nonchalant people were when they were sending these pictures. And you can see here, this was made in the courtyard, it says. This is a picture of a black child hanging from his neck, lynched. And it says the lynching of Lige Daniels. It was from Center, Texas, 1920. And it says this was made in the courtyard in Center, Texas. So they did this like in the courtyard, in the center of town.
It's the town square.
In the town square. And it says he's a 16-year-old black boy. And then it says he killed Earl's grandma. She was Florence's mother. Give this to Bud from Aunt Myrtle. Wow. Aunt Myrtle wanted the person in her family, Florence's mother, to give this postcard to Bud so that he could see that this person had been killed. Wow. Like, look, it is done.
We took care of it.
It's been taken care of. And, of course, there was no judge. There was no jury. Mm-hmm. There was only execution.
There was no civil rights.
A boy. This was routinely done to children. Yes. Don't think that that white people were just murdering adults. They murdered babies. They murdered little kids. They murdered teenagers. They've always done that. Don't think that that ICE just started being inhumane to little Mexican kids and Central American kids. They've been doing that this entire time. From the moment that the colonizers got here, they were feeding our children to their dogs.
Yes, exactly.
They were taking them off their mother's teats and bashing their heads against rocks.
Mm-hmm.
So don't tell me that they're taking good care of them. They've been raping them, drugging them. This has never stopped. It's never changed. The tendency to want to do that to these little children, to black and brown little children, has never stopped. Not even from those claiming to be from the church, or should I say, especially not from those claiming to be from the church.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all even raped your own kind.
Yeah.
Those white priests were raping everybody. They were raping equal opportunity rapers.
Yep.
So let me show you another postcard. This one says, taken in March 3rd of 1910, 2 hours after the lynchings of the Negro rapist Brown? They called him Brown.
Yeah.
He was dragged through the street from the courthouse and hanged to the southwest corner of the arch.
Wow.
There is an arch for visitors in the picture that says welcome visitors to presumably their town. There are thousands of people in the road. And from the arch that welcomes people to the town, that has a little, looks like a bell up there and says welcome visitors, that's where they hung black people and brown people from. That's where they lynched people at. That's how white people do. They didn't hang them out in secret somewhere where it wasn't going to permanently tarnish and make this historic landmark of the town covered in the blood of the murders of white supremacists. That's what they did. They didn't do it out in the boonies. They did it in the most important places in
public
town.
Squares.
In the most public places in town. And it says, the crowd seen in the picture is nothing compared with the mob at the time the picture was taken. The mob had already left. Nothing compares to the mob. And then it says, at the time, the lynch mob that went and got him to kill him.
Oh.
This is when everyone was leaving after the lynching. So this crowd compares nothing to the amount of people that actually went to get this person. You remember the jails, whether a group of people went and took a person out of their home or went and picked them out of the jail. The police were complicit in all of these lynchings.
Mm-hmm.
Never forget, the police were complicit in the murders, in the genocide against black people and continuation of genocide against Native people. And these lynchings and the many other ways that they have found to kill us. It says, at the time the picture was taken, the mob had already left the scene and was on their way to the jail after another Negro victim. After something, what is that word?
I can't tell.
The jail after another Negro victim. After somebody, it looks like a name, like Owato, another Negro victim. So they all left there to go get another black person to lynch. That's why there's not that many people that left in the picture. And this was in Dallas, Texas.
And then it says at the bottom, in downtown Dallas, a crowd of 5,000 watch this black man get, we don't have any more lynched.
Okay, next one. Here's another one. And where does this take place, I wonder? It says 1903 there. And could you make it Kentucky? Is that right? Logan County, Kentucky, July 31st, 1908. My grandfather was born in 1900. How about yours?
My grandfather?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, if mine was born in 1900 and you're older than me, then more likely than not yours was born before mine.
Oh, no, I think it's like 1910.
Your grandpa was younger than mine?
I think so.
How do you
Because it was 1890 when his father came to, North Dakota.
1890?
Yeah. So he was like in his 20s, early 1900s. My grandfather was born.
The early 1900s?
Yeah, because he died in the 80s and he was 83.
Well, it wasn't like great grandpa or many, many generations ago. This was not that long ago.
Yeah.
This was not that long ago. This was during the time that my grandfather was alive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that this was going on. And here's what's written on that postcard. It says, I bought this. This is a postcard, of course, that was mailed through the mail. And it says, I bought this in Memphisville or Memphisville? 15 cents each. They are not on sale openly. I forgot to send it until just now. I ran across it. I read an account of the night riders' affairs where it says these men were hung without any apparent cause or reason whatsoever. A law was passed forbidding these postcards to be sent through the mail or to be sold anymore.
Wow.
Yes, because basically they were
Lawbreakers.
just documenting white people's crimes for all of posterity and mailing the evidence of that through the federal postal system, which is a federal crime that no white people were ever charged with. Ever.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Anyway, here's another postcard, and this one says, this is the barbecue, and it was in reference to the picture you saw earlier where a black man was being burned on a cross.
Oh, yeah.
And he's dismembered, so, his arms, legs are missing. It says, this was the barbecue we had last night.
Wow. When
I say that white people were taking souvenirs and body parts and that they were burning these people, why did I say that they were cooking them?
Because they sent the evidence. They explained the evidence. It's all documented.
Why were people cooking black people?
To eat them.
This says right here, this is the barbecue that we had. Had as in enjoyed as in ate.
Yep. Wow.
Last night. My picture is to the left with a cross over it. Your son, Joe. Hey, I'm the one there on the left with the cross over it. You can see in the picture. I'm the one over there on the left.
Wow.
And he's proud of it. And you can see people enjoying, smiling in the picture as they look at this gruesome, horrifying sight of a child, what looks like a child, or a very young man, being tortured and burned.
Yeah.
Here's another postcard. And this one says, this is where they lynched a Negro the other day. They don't, however, who done it. They don't know who done it. I guess they don't care much. I don't. Do you? Oh my God. Did Melania travel through time and go to a lynching in the past?
Oh my God.
Did you see that? Let me read this again. It says, this is where they lynched a Negro the other day. This is where they lynched a Negro the other day. They don't know who done it. I guess they don't care. I guess they don't care much. I don't, do you, ?
Wow.
It's Melania. This is, do you see how what Melania did, mocking the children that are at the border, separated from their parents, little children, little babies, some of them.
Wow. Totally.
Look at the evidence of the fact that nobody cares about black people being murdered willy-nilly. I don't care either. How about you? Wow. That's what Melania went and did. We don't care about children being separated permanently from their parents. We don't care about ethnic cleansing via kidnapping of children and assimilation to whiteness and white supremacy. Do you? She even wore it on the back of her jacket. I don't care. Do you? Here's another postcard. It says, oh, that's the same one with the barbecue.
Okay.
Let's go to our next one. That's the other one that you just did. Is that all of them?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's all of them then. Okay. Now, moving on, I want to show you another example of how pervasive it's in everything. It's in everywhere. And why you have to call it out, all of it, all the time. Immerse yourself in it. Learn about it so that you can talk about it. So that you can talk about it for hours and hours and hours like this. In order to build up your racial stamina. In order to build up your racial stamina to deal with all of this hatred and call it out, you have to become more aware of things you couldn't even see before. And the only way that you're going to do that is to spend a lot more time studying the nitty-gritty of the Holocaust of indigenous people in this continent, the largest Holocaust in humankind. You have to study the history of slavery, the kidnapping of our people, the way that the children have been kidnapped, raped, and abused, our women, and how that has fed into rape culture, how white people's perverted sexuality, where they were raping their slaves, and then they would rape their own children who were slaves, and they would sell their own children and rape their both male and female, and then have homophobic fears about the people that they themselves had sexual experiences with who were male, and how homophobia has been fed by the disgusting habits of the colonizers who brutalized and raped people. That's what I'm talking about having to eradicate in our present life, right? How do you get at these topics unless you are calling this out? So you have to learn about it. You've had to immerse yourself.
Definitely.
So remember in the beginning when we used to talk about this stuff, you couldn't stand to talk about it for very long because you.
I need to take out the garbage. Hold on. It's a very important discussion about racism. Did you get the garbage can from the front? Oh, okay. You did. You get okay. You were saying, I need to do an email before I go to bed. Oh, you want to still talk about the racism? And the following is sleep syndrome also. I encountered that. I still get it every once in a while. I was like, I got to stay awake and listen to this, So it's like all sorts of derailing tactics that have been built in, that I've had to shed and shred.
Well, the way that we achieved that, though, is to spend more and more and more time talking about these things that you didn't talk about before. And at first, you were uncomfortable with talking about it for even a very short period of time, even bringing it up. Then later on, you got more comfortable listening to things for longer, studying them for longer, listening to me read to you, teach you, explain the history of things with you. Going to Mexico helped you immensely in learning about the history.
Definitely.
So that's how you build up the stamina. You need to build up your stamina, because otherwise you're not going to be able to take on the racism, the white supremacy, the rape culture, the misogyny that is built into most people in America.
Right.
And it's a difficult, well-rooted, multi-headed demon that I'm talking about here. You're not going to easily eradicate it, uproot it, and get rid of it. It's been here for hundreds of years in the making, and we've done precious little, especially white folks.
Yeah.
Y'all especially have done precious little.
Exactly.
To ratchet it back, to stop it, to call it out, to demand that it be eradicated completely from America's culture and values. Let me show you another way in which there are hidden racism history lessons everywhere in America.
Yep.
Show one of the lynching trees for me, please. This one, by the way, this particular tree that we're looking at right now is a eucalyptus tree.
Okay.
And can you tell from the kind of leaves that it has that it's a eucalyptus? Yep. And if you see up there on the branch, you see the noose, and this is a picture from 2012.
Wow.
This is not some vintage picture. These trees, these places that commemorate murders, genocide, that commemorate crimes by white people for which nobody has ever been charged. This was just like, you guys like to watch these horror movies about the purge, and people will just go out and in mobs and murder anything murder anyone that they want. Yeah, that's a real thing. You don't have to put it in the sci-fi or fantasy thriller category. That's been done. That's still done by white vigilantes, white supremacists, and cops.
Yep.
To this day. Always has been, always will. So, in this particular tree that you're looking at, called the hangman's tree, with the noose in it, it is currently in Knott's Berry Farm in Orange County.
Wow.
In what is called a ghost town. I don't know if it's some kind of like
ghost
visitor town where you can go look at an old ghost town and see what it was like.
Probably.
And this photograph, it was taken by Lauren Javier. So there is an article that I did on the history, the racist history, the white supremacist history of the immigration system, called Border Patrol as a Function of White Supremacy, in which this particular set of lynching trees and the history of the lynching trees and the photography of the lynching trees is cited.
I see.
But I also went ahead and separately found the articles that I took these photos from, one of which, both of which are called Witness to a Hanging. One is from boomcalifornia.com. The other is from the jaredfarm.net. And those will be linked in the comments of this show so that you can all check those out for yourself in more detail. And again, I would suggest that you immerse yourself. Even if you're feeling uncomfortable, like, I can only do 15 minutes of this, push yourself to do an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, such that you could spend entire days doing this.
Yes.
Or so that you get to the point where you can be comfortable combating racism and staying immersed in doing that for the rest of your life. Because we don't get to just take our skin off or take a break from being Mexicans and be like, oh man, this talking about what's happening to the Mexicans and the black people, it makes me feel really bad. And I just need to go watch a cat video or take a vacation for a while because it just makes me feel so uncomfortable. I don't want to think about it anymore. Mexican people can't do that.
Yeah.
I can't do that. Black people can't do that. Native American people can't do that. Indigenous people of this continent can't do that. We're always trying to survive. We're always trying to protect our children's future. We're trying to give them some semblance of freedom in a world that is increasingly fascist, racist, and discriminatory toward our people. Here's another one of those lynching trees. Most people don't know that Mexicans were lynched on par with black people. I don't know why it's been hidden so much that Mexicans, indigenous people, were hung on par with black people. But I think it probably has to do a lot with how the hidden history of the cruelty, the continuing genocide against indigenous people, how those stories and histories have really been hidden, like the horrors of the boarding schools and the mental health facilities where they just like packed a bunch of native people in there, and
insane asylums,
the migrant schools, and
yeah, exactly.
these places where they raped and killed our children, the social service system, taking our babies and giving them to white people, all that stuff that's been done. Those things have kind of more recently been known and come out and been studied and been talked about, whereas the lynching, the wholesale lynching of black people, killing of black people, was openly discussed in the papers. And like if your slave ran away, people would put ads in the papers saying, if you find my slave, I will pay you this much money. They have this letter, branded into their body somewhere, and I've cut off a part of their body in the past because they ran away. So look with the one with the missing ear or with the missing hand.
Yeah.
Like they advertise in the paper, like I hack off pieces of my slave that's tried to escape from me in the past, or that just pissed me off one day, because we can do that to black people. We can kill them if we want to, and nobody can do or say anything about it because they're our property. Just like if I want to put down my horse or my cow, I can do it, or my dog. And it's my dog to kill, so I can do it. And nobody can do anything to me. Well, that's how black people were talked about openly. Whereas I think the government put native people, the land theft, the genocide, and the raping of those people into a different kind of a category under the functions openly of the government and our military on making these people go into reservations and exterminating them. I think that because it was an open genocide and extermination, there wasn't as much documentation of the methods, as the very openly acceptable way that black people were being lynched and killed. It says here on this tree. Why don't you read it, dude?
Yeah, I was reading that when it's a hangman's tree. Long ago, when Ghost Town was at Riven Rip Roaring Minin Camp, desperados came to bold with these here crimes. So the good law-abiding citizens formed a vigilante committee and hanged 3 of the worst offenders from this here tree.
Wow.
After the 3rd hanging, the tree died. But the old rope still remains as an ominous warning. Till this day, desperados, stay clear of this here town.
You know what desperados were? They were indigenous people of this continent. They were the indigenous people whose lands were taken and stolen by white people.
Yeah.
Many time by vicious riots in which they just burned the whole town, killed everyone, took everything that they could, and then took over the ranch lands. These murderous white ranchers took over 90% of the ranch lands that were formerly owned exclusively by Mexicans, by these Mexicans turned desperados.
Yeah, exactly.
That were robbed. In fact, one such person was the Murriega was his name, was the predecessor on which the story of Zorro is made.
Yes,
and
sensationalized, yes.
And he was Zorro, the original character that Zorro was made from was not Spanish. He was Mexican.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a ranch owner, man, as was his family, his family owned thing. And these white vigilantes were going around stealing, raping, murdering at will, willy-nilly. And because they, lasted out most of the other folks in their vicinity, they didn't really rise up against what was going on. And I don't know if that made Jose Murrieta feel more like he had been a coward, and then these vigilantes came around and they raped his wife and they murdered his brother. And that was all that he really had. So, and then of course they took his ranch. He got away. They didn't kill him. And he became a desperado.
I see.
You know what the word desperado means? Nothing. There's a lot of Spanish words that white people use to this day that they mispronounce because they're stupid and they don't know how to speak Spanish properly. Like, juzgao. Savvy. Savvy comes from the word saber. Sabe? It comes from the word sabe, to know something. Do you know? And juzgao comes from the word juzgado, which means judged or judgment or to judge. And it's used as the clink, like the jail. That's how, or that's how they call the court system or the, and desperado comes from the word desesperado, which means exasperated, desperate.
Okay.
It means desperate. How did you make that person desperate? Perhaps by murdering his family, stealing his land, and raping his women?
Yes.
Is that how he became a desperado? So, there's so many others.
Yep.
There's so many others.
Mm-hmm.
Vaquero is like cowboy in Spanish.
Okay.
And that's where your dumb buckaroo comes from.
Ah, I see.
But it's vaquero, pendejos. Aprendan a hablar el español.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all need to learn.
Yep.
Anyway, these very, very Mexican words were used all the time by these racist white people in your Western movies. You know, the ones I'm talking about with all of the fighting between the Mexican desperados and the bandidos. That's not the way that you say that either. Bandido means some kind of a bandit.
Yeah.
Y'all need to learn your Spanish. Okay. Show me another hanging tree. This one here says at the very top, scenes of many executions in the 50s.
The 50s.
Not in the 1900s.
Yep. This is when I was alive.
This was when you were alive. This was when most of my audience was probably alive.
Mm-hmm.
Or close to being alive. This wasn't a long time, folks. Please stop saying get over it.
That was a long time
You
ago.
can't get over something you still have. And you, in this country, are saturated in the blood and genocide of your racism and white supremacy. It is all around you. The evidence of your crimes are all around you. In a postcard printed circa 1900, which shows a knotted oak tree near Julian in San Diego County, and it has a rhyme that is on the postcard in the voice of the tree, and it goes like this. In the days of old, in the days of gold, nuggets were picked by the peck. On a limb of mine, in 1879, a man was hung by his neck. So there's poetry,
Wow.
there's music, there's it's everywhere. The evidence is everywhere. And you know what? We need to stop coddling it. Here's another photo. We need to stop coddling it. You can see this historic spot is what looks like some kind of a tavern or some kind of a place to hang out.
Yeah.
A bar.
It's called the Hangman's Tree.
Which is called the Hangman's Tree.
Historical
and
spot.
They've got a mannequin with brown hair and a mustache that has brown skin that looks like a Mexican hanging from a noose. This is This is not many, many years ago. This picture was taken while this sign was up announcing the move of this historic spot from its current location at wherever this is to 208 Smith Flat Road somewhere else. And it says, we're moving. And it says, final day, September 14, 2008.
Yes.
How long ago was that?
10 years ago.
That wasn't very long ago at all. And this is still acceptable and celebrated in a country of murderous, genocidal lynchers. People that enjoy modern day lynchings. So if you wanted to know if people in America have a palate for this, yes, they have a palate for it. They've always had a palate for it. They've always enjoyed celebrating the torture and abuse and killing and taking of the children and destroying of families of people of color. Always. It is the form in which modern day lynching is taking place that we can now shame, shun, and shut down these racists by capturing these celebrations, capturing these racists celebrating at the locations where they're being racist, where they're celebrating the lynchings, where they're celebrating the abuse and the tortures, videotape them, screen capture, get public profiles, pictures, and posts that show what kind of people they really are deep down before they have a chance to erase them, their public information, and then make that go viral. Send it out to the public. Make those people feel shame for what they're doing now so that they will know that they're going to be held accountable now and in the future. Don't let these racists get away with this. I wanted to interject that conversation because I want to encourage the people out there that are shaming, shunning, and shutting down racists, that are calling out the people in their groups, that are standing up to the cops in their community, that are filming, that are making themselves more prepared to protect people of color. Thank you for doing that. I know it's been hard. It's only going to get harder because these fragile white supremacist egos, these rapists' egos, are very, very fragile. And they don't like to feel uncomfortable. In fact, they don't want people bringing up all the bad things that they're doing. So instead of taking their lumps and being humble in some way and going, whoa, I can't do this. I got to put the Nazi back in the closet so that other people can be free. These folks are pushing back, and the media is supporting them. The wacko alt-right, right-wing media is supporting it. The cops are supporting it. And of course, our wacko president is supporting it.
Yes.
But believe me, the way that we are being seen, the way that we are an international joke in the rest of the world. Most white Americans are isolated, and when they do leave this country for any reason, they have to go to some kind of resort-like experience so that they can always be in their white supremacist bubble and never have to feel any discomfort at any exploitation of the people that they're around, or racism against, or discrimination against the people that they're around can affect them in any negative way. So they don't actually have to look at the poverty and the suffering of the people that whose country that they're there to enjoy. And so they don't necessarily get the experience of, traveling around the world or around to other countries where they're being shown and told how people perceive Americans and them in particular. But believe me, the rest of the world is catching on. Even not so long as, actually, I want to say it was right after 9/11, in 2001. The escalation of the hatred and the rhetoric against Muslims, and immediately the closure of the U.S.-Mexico border.
Yeah.
And the way that the propaganda from 9/11 was used to enact measures that lead us to the moment of these concentration camps
Yes,
today,
yes,
normalizing
Yeah.
rounding up people en masse, targeting people on the basis of race and ethnicity and religion. So ever since then, all of the times I've gone back to Mexico, I have noticed, and even when we've gone to Canada, I've noticed the change in the way that Americans are perceived and talked to. Even Americans are treated pretty well everywhere that they go, especially in this North American continent.
Mm-hmm.
In Canada, especially, is very polite to anybody that comes there and visits. They're super polite people. But even they would talk about us more and more about, like, what in the hell is going on with you people?
Yeah, what's wrong with
Like,
those people?
You guys are out of control, Americans. And that was weird for me to hear from Canadian people, because I'm like, I thought you people never criticized anyone or anything.
Yeah. When they said, oh, we're sorry, I didn't realize you were American.
Yeah. They're like,
I apologize for saying that. We're like, no. You go ahead and say what you're saying. I want to hear it.
and in Mexico, people have gotten downright desesperados when they talk to Americans. I'll give you an example of what that looks like and what that word actually means. Okay. Every time I frequently take people to Mexico, friends, white Americans, so that they can have a genuine experience. And every time we got into a cab and the cab driver recognized, of course, that they were Americans, they would say, Can you tell them something for me? And I would translate for these cab drivers, and they would tell these stories that had so much pain in every word about how they had to, I went to your country to work, undocumented, and this is how I was treated, and this is what I endured to get there. They would tell you about how they crossed the desert and how many days it took them through this particularly difficult deadly part of the desert that the racist immigration policies meant to supposedly deter people from coming. All it does is kill them, because they can't stop.
Yeah.
They can't stop trying to escape death and starvation. So they're going to come. You're just murdering them before they can get there. That's all you're doing. Just as the zero tolerance policy is not a deterrent. It's just a way of kidnapping indigenous children and giving them to white people. You guys love to do that. And now you're just repeating it. Why aren't you just honest? And you also want to steal our DNA. You couldn't get us to shop for those DNA kits on 23andMe and because all of Ancestry.com is more for white people than it is for the people you kidnapped and enslaved from their lands and forced off of their natural lands and destroyed all of the records of their ancestry and their history. It's more for white folks. And since you couldn't get our DNA that way, I guess you decided you would steal it from babies. Y'all are some disgusting monsters, and the Department of Homeland Security has admitted that the Border Patrol purposely destroyed thousands of records that identified parents and children when they entered the country. So, this is how America has always been. And to get more to, down into the gnat's ass, as one of my foster parents used to say, we are lousy with the genocide, the killing of people of color. We are lousy with it. The modern day lynchings are just an evidence of how rampant and normalized and accepted it is by most white people in America and normalized for people of color in America. The amount of desperation and injustice behind that is so huge. And, that's why the people in those cabs were speaking to you all in those tones of frustration mixed with sadness and hopelessness and passion and anger. Like, how the F don't you know that thousands of people are dying this way, but you don't seem to care, do you?
Yeah.
Just like Melania and the Back to the Future postcard we looked at said,
exactly.
Don't you care? That's how they talked. And they would talk about with this resilient, honorable, righteous anger that they were humble people, that they were not lawbreakers, that they didn't do anything bad when they came here, that they came here to serve this industry or that industry or these people in some way. And they worked hard. They helped the employer. They helped the company. They helped their family members back home. Then they went back to Mexico. And, they've done this several times. And they've been treated like crap at each time and nearly killed at every turn. And they want you to know those stories. They want you to hear those stories. And the reason why this escalation of desesperación, of this desperation that people of color feel, is because, yes, the majority of white people have all become comfortably numb to our deaths, to these modern day lynchings, and to the continuation of our genocide. You've become all too placidly complacent, and too placidly complacent with your fellow family members and community members engaging in the celebration of these lynchings and or talking favorably about white supremacy or ethnic cleansing. And that, to me, to a person of color, a Mexican crossing lines, that is unforgivable. And I encourage you to look around you and stop these people. Take conscience now. Save your own soul. Stop sinning. Repent and sin no more. Because God is real. And y'all should be praying. That's what I have to say about the modern day lynchings, encouraging all of you to keep shaming, shunning, and shutting them down. Thank you for being with us here at 88.1 FM KPPPLP Fargo Moorhead, where we are adding local color to your airwaves on a Mexican Crossing Lines.